Arrow recap: who's in the mood for ice cream? Arrow and Laurel bond over dessert. China White makes her entry. Arrow certainly got off to a solid start last week, but tonight's episode really convinced me this series is worth committing to. While the premiere focused heavily on Arrow, Oliver's backstory, and understandably so, episode 2 sets up his relationships with Laurel and his bodyguard, both of which will evidently become more significant as the season progresses. It also introduces some new players, China White, and major plot twists. Let's discuss below. In case you forgot that this series was high on action, the opening scene kicks off with Arrow physically forcing yet another corrupt businessman to fess up to his crimes. It's not long before the confession grabs headlines. The next day, Oliver watches a news report that says the businessman was coerced into confessing by a mysterious hooded vigilante. This guy gets more airtime than the Kardashians, he says, while pointing to a sketch of his alter ego on TV. To her credit, his sister promptly responds, 5 years on an island and you still know who they are. Oh, if only it was that easy to forget. I've been catching up. It's nice to see how much our culture has improved while I was away, says Oliver sardonically. Sadly, the Kardashian cultural analysis gets cut short as Walter jumps in to ask Oliver if he's ready to head to the courthouse to deliver his proof of life declaration. Both Oliver's mother and Walter promise it'll be a simple process, but of course, it's anything but. At the courthouse, Oliver finds himself having to recount the dreary details of his shipwreck. Wait, so showing up alive isn't enough to get declared undead? Even Oliver thinks it's strange. Afterward, he declines an invitation to go to see his father's office on account of being emotionally drained. As he prepares to leave the courthouse, he runs into Laurel, who is there to fight a case against Martin Summers, a drug-smuggling businessman who she thinks killed her client's father. Needless to say, the meeting doesn't go well, especially since Laurel still hasn't forgotten that Oliver told her to stay away from him. Of course, it's not long before their paths cross again. Once Oliver finds out that Laurel is going after Summers, he decides it's time to cross the businessman off his revenge list too. After squeezing in a workout, no salmon ladder this time, though there was some impressive rope climbing, Arrow corners Summers and tells him to confess to the murder or face the consequences. You failed this city, Arrow tells Summers. Yep, that's his signature line. Later, Oliver heads home only to get lectured by his mother, who wants to know why he keeps ditching his bodyguard dig. Oliver convinces her he was out with a girl and that he just wanted some alone time, but his mum gets emotional about the possibility of losing her son all over again. Her emotions seem genuine, though as we saw last week, we can't trust her just yet. But the drama doesn't end there. Oliver also gets yelled at by his sister, who claims that all he's done since coming back from the dead is judge her teenagers. Next, Oliver and Laurel share a tub of ice cream. Meanwhile, Lance, aka Laurel's father, arrives at the docks to meet with Mr. Summers. Apparently, Summers called 911 to say that he was threatened by a green-hooded vigilante, but when Lance shows up, he denies it. After the detective refuses to let the issue go, Summers threatens to kill him and Laurel. Over at Queen Corp, Oliver's mum and Walter give him a tour of the fancy new offices and tell him they're planning to dedicate a new building in his father's name. They also ask him to take on a leadership position at the company, but Oliver isn't having it. Once they're out of the building, Dig points out that Oliver doesn't seem to be as messed up in the head as he should be, especially after spending 5 years alone on an island. It prompts Oliver to have another flashback and we learn that he didn't drift ashore alone. He managed to bring his father's dead body with him. As Oliver revisits his dark past, Laurel's dad arranges for her to get around the clock police protection. It's a smart move because, unbeknownst to them, Summer has just hired China White, who looks so much like Lady Gaga, to kill Laurel. In his room, Oliver learns that Summer has decided not to testify. Obviously, he's pissed. Before he can take any action though, his sister, Thea, walks in, clearly taken aback by the many scars on his back and waist. Pretty sure this scene was just an excuse to flaunt Stephen Amell's ABS again, not that I'm complaining. Thea takes Oliver to their backyard where she shows him 2 gravestones, one for Oliver and one for their father. She tells him that she'd talked to his grave when he was missing and that it was easier for her to connect with him then than it is now. Again, teenagers. I know she had a rough 5 years, but being alone on a scary island trumps being alone in a mansion any day. Thea also tells Oliver that eventually, he's going to have to let someone in. He seems to listen to that last bit of advice, though unfortunately for Thea, she's not the one he decides to open up to. Instead, he heads over to Laurel's place. She's still upset that he told her to stay away, and really, who can blame her? But he apologizes and manages to convince her to let him in. Inside the apartment, he tells her that while he was on the island, there was something he dreamed of doing every day, something that he only wanted to do with her. Naturally, she thinks he's about to make a move, and who wouldn't after a flirty setup like that, but instead, he pulls out a bucket of ice cream. The two dig in and, along the way, break down their barriers. I have to admit, after last week's episode, I was a bit worried that we were going to be subjected to an entire season of Oliver pretending to be a douche to push Laurel away for her own good. I mean, how predictable, right? Instead, we got an unguarded and very sweet moment between them. Here's hoping we get to see more of the friendship and the chemistry develop as the season progresses. Next, China White attacks Oliver and Laurel. It's not long before the ice cream date is rudely interrupted. Oliver and Laurel are attacked by a slew of assassins led by China White. Though Oliver tries to protect Laurel, there's only so much he can do without revealing his alter ego. Luckily, Dig, his bodyguard, shows up right on time and fends off most of the assassins. He nearly gets stabbed by China White, but Oliver manages to knock down her weapon from a distance with a kitchen knife. His perfect aim does not go unnoticed by Dig. Later, Det. Lance arrives at the crime scene and warns Oliver to stay away from his daughter. I understand his anger. After all, Oliver is partly to blame for his other daughter's death, but in this case, it's obvious his presence saved Laurel's life. Am I right? Upset about the attempt on Laurel's life, Arrow decides it's time to get some retribution, so he heads to the docks to confront Summers. Arrow threatens Summers until he confesses, but the interrogation is interrupted by China White. The two engage in some serious hand-to-hand combat. In the process, we learn that Arrow knows how to speak Chinese. Let's add that to the list of languages he picked up on the island. Arrow continues to pursue China, but she gets away thanks to Det. Lance, who pulls a gun on our hooded hero. Arrow takes aim at the gun and escapes. Later, Det. Lance realizes that the arrow which knocked his gun down holds Summers' full confession. Much like last time, Laurel is thrilled to discover justice has been served, and unlike her father, she doesn't care that it was thanks to a vigilante who works outside of the law. After saving the city yet again, Oliver heads to the building dedication for his father. But instead of giving a graceful speech, he pretends to be drunk and tells everyone, including the media, to stop asking him to be the man his father was. The plan, it seems, is to get everyone to believe that Oliver Queen is still the same reckless playboy he was before the shipwreck. Everyone seems disappointed at Oliver's drunken antics, including Laurel, who actually showed up. Back at home, Oliver crosses Summers' name off his list. Cue another flashback to the island. This time, we see that Oliver found the notebook with the list in his father's back pocket and that it contains an odd circular symbol. Back in Starling City, Oliver's mother gets into an unidentified car and assures a mystery person that her son has no idea the yacht accident was sabotage. Then we see the mystery person look at something. It's the same circular symbol Oliver found in his dad's notebook. Meanwhile, Oliver heads to his father's grave and explains that in order to save the city, he's going to have to dishonor his father's memory. Afterward, he has another flashback, this time resulting in a major reveal. While mourning his father's death on the island, Oliver was shot in the shoulder with an arrow by a man in a hood. Boom. Is it possible this cloaked shooter trained Arrow? Is he to Arrow what Takeda is to Emily? Sorry, I can't help making the revenge connections. Leave your theories below. Also, let me know what you thought of the Oliver-Laurel relationship.